Good morning, everyone. This is Mike Krenke with the Sustainable Forest Education Cooperative out of Cloquet, Minnesota. We have it's like a rainy day today. It's kind of humid in Cloquet, but otherwise it looks like a normal summer day. So today we have Allison Muth talking about important interactions with landowners to promote good land stewardship. And we have a very interesting webinar today. Allison will be talking about working with landowners and some of the research she's done. She's got a very interesting background. Before I introduce Allison, we'll go through a little bit of the logistics of the webinar. The webinar is about an hour long, so Allison's presentation will be about 45 minutes. If you'd like to ask questions during the webinar, you see on your screen, the upper left-hand side, there's a little chat pod. You'll see kind of like a brain on the right-hand side. You can click onto that chat pod, type in your question, and then click onto the brain, and that will send the question up to Allison, and everyone can see the question. So you can do that throughout the webinar or at the end of the webinar, whatever works best for you. If you happen to be a stewardship plan writer, indicate that within registrations. If you haven't already, you can type it in the chat pod, and we will make sure that you get the 1 credit for the forest stewardship plan writers or the certified foresters. So with that in mind, this is a series of 10 webinars that the Sustainable Forest Education Cooperative has hosted this year and will be continuing to host. The DNR is helping to sponsor the webinar series. We thank the Minnesota DNR for their sponsorship. I would like to thank Mike Reichenbach, who recommended Allison for this webinar. He's working with her. He's also online today, so I'm sure he'll have comments or questions as we go along. We have consulting foresters, the DNR Wildlife, Jody Provost. So we have a couple extension people online, one from Wisconsin. So welcome. So to begin, Allison is the Forest Stewardship Program Associate at Penn State School of Forestry Resources. She received her BS in Natural Resources from the University of South Sewanee, Tennessee, her Master's of Forestry from Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, and her Doctorate of Education in Collaborative Learning from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Allison has worked for the timber industry and consulting foresters, and since 2004 has coordinated the statewide Pennsylvania Forest Stewards volunteer program, served as editor of Forest Leaves, and dabbled in research and outreach focused on private forest landowner education and the interaction between landowners and resource professionals. So Allison is going to share some of her thoughts of reaching landowners with good land stewardship messages. So Allison, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mike. Can everyone hear me okay? I hope so. I tend to speak softly, but I'll do my best today. So the title of this is Important Interactions with Landowners to Promote Good Land Stewardship. I tend to be long with my titles, so I was going to add our role, the right questions, and the power of peers. So those are the kind of things I was going to talk about today. So just to give you an idea, from where does this presentation come? In my education and practice, there's been a whole lot of time spent studying private forest landowners, almost over-studying. But what we're seeing is that we still perhaps aren't able to move them to a good land stewardship place. And so I started wondering if maybe the issue was it's not about we don't understand them, but maybe there's an issue with us and as a resource professional in our practice. And I started thinking about ways to change that interaction, and that kind of drove my my search for additional education and ending up in the field of adult ed and collaborative learning. So I'm going to that's kind of where this is coming from, kind of where we've been, who we are as a profession, and then some ways to maybe think about moving us off of where we've been to change the interaction. So, what I hope to cover today, I'm going to talk a little bit about how our roles are evolving, and these are all things that you all as practitioners are watching happen. I'm going to talk about engaging private forest landowners in a phenomenological way. This is the part about asking the right questions. And then talk a little bit about peer-to-peer learning networks and some of the things we're doing here in Pennsylvania and how that's working for us, and maybe some ideas for you all to think about as you go out and have your practice. So in my search for clarity of all this, I usually start with definitions. So I went to the Society of American Foresters Dictionary and looked up what a forester was. And you can read what this says. The parts that stood out to me thinking about relationships were that we're doing this for human benefit and in a sustainable manner to meet desired goals, needs, and values. Now, SAF doesn't say whose those are. You know, we hope that those, when working with private forest lands, those desired goals, needs, and values are the private forest landowner. But we're not real clear about that. So that's something to think about to start. Whose values are we advocating? When we start out in our profession as a natural resource professional, we're trained scientists, we're trained foresters. We're not necessarily educators or communicators. I don't know about you all, but I know I got into forestry to be by myself in the woods with my dog, maybe in a fire tower with all my books, but away from people. And then I got out there and got lonely and started thinking about, okay, well, private forest landowners own the majority of land everywhere I've been. Maybe I need to figure this out better. So we're really trained, our whole education and background is how do we work with the resource, not really about the people. We're taught how to foster an expert-client relationship. We're taught to think of ourselves as the technical experts, and landowners are these passive recipients. Conversations between us and them are kind of a one-way conveyance of knowledge and information. And that's something that is foundational to our practice. It comes out of our education. It comes out of our training. This is how you tell somebody what the right thing to do is on their land. Put it visually, natural resource professionals are the golden triangle conveying their vast knowledge and expertise to private forest landowners, willing recipients even going so far as to sit in neat little rows. So it's kind of, we're kind of set up this way. This expert-client relationship, I've said it before, we're trained to be an expert. I know my academic experience and all the other academic programs I've either been in or been on the edge of in work. This is how we set up our students. The concern is that when you're an expert, well, what happens when you don't have an answer? Can you say, I don't know, or let's figure that out together? And the concern is this potential to lose credibility if you not hem and haw, but maybe inquire into something without giving a definitive response. Now, I have to put this caveat in here. I'm not saying when I talk about this, and remember this through the whole thing, expertise is not a bad thing. It is important and necessary to the conversation. I present this as an issue when we're seeing the exchange of information not being two-way, that we as professionals are only feeding information to landowners and we're not giving them voice. In 1999, the Journal of Forestry did a special section on employees in the field, how students were coming out of academic programs, and what they as employers were looking for. And, you know, I went through and was selective about it, but the the pieces that people were looking for were not the technical things, though those were vital and important, but also the ability to communicate and cooperate and be a leader and be in a team and just know how to talk to landowners. And you all have been through this. You are all trained. And likely you learned a lot of these things on the job or had other experiences that took you to an understanding of how to communicate, how to build a reputable business, how to educate. But that wasn't something that came out of primary bachelor's programs, forestry technician programs. Some of the issues we're seeing when we have this expert-client relationship, when we have this non-reciprocal exchange of information, tremendous opportunity for miscommunication. In our natural resource professional field, we have a strong technical language, and a lot of landowners feel that if they don't know it, they can't communicate with us. We've got a real misunderstanding of goals. Even today, I see our extension programs here at Penn State, and we're working to change these, talking about how to make money off a property. Well, that's really not why a lot of people own their land. Our focus is on the resource by necessity. That's what we're trained to do. That's what we want to do. We hope to do. We love it. We want to care for it. But the people who we're working with who own the land, they're focused on what the land gives them and how that meshes with their personal values. And I'm only going to mention this in passing. This is fodder for future conversations. But one of the things we're thinking about here is this idea of right versus good. And I bring this up because so often, and I know my practice has been guilty of it, focusing on a right answer for a resource. That there is usually a solution out there that is the right thing to do for a resource. But by golly, if that solution doesn't mesh with what a landowner values about their land or is willing to do on their land, it's never going to happen. And so the right answer becomes inaction, a non-action. Nobody's going to do anything. So what we're talking about here in Pennsylvania and in our work is maybe moving people to think about a good answer from a professional side standpoint, that maybe there is something that will move the resource to a better place, for a better health, a better sustainability, however you define better, but that's really going to mesh with what a landowner holds dear. And it may not be the right thing to do, but it's a good thing to do. So I'll just throw that out for fodder for you to think about at some point in the future. In 2006, we started a series of private forest landowner studies here in Pennsylvania. And again, we're studying them more. But we tried something different. What we found here was in our 2006 study, about 10% of our private forest landowners have written forest management plans. Only about 25% of them have ever sought forestry advice from a consulting forester, 9% from an industry forester, 12% from a Bureau of Forestry forester, and that's our state agency. I would bet that perhaps except where tax implications or regulation requirements, landowners need to get management plans. The numbers are probably similar in areas where there is a lot of private forest land. And they're probably even not that dissimilar even where those programs exist. Most landowners don't have management plans. They're not sure of their objectives. They don't know where to get assistance. They don't know that management, as we define it, can improve their woodlots for whatever values they have, be they wildlife, recreation, wood products, firewood. They're not thinking through the financial value of their woodlands, and that has implications when somebody comes and knocks on their door and offers them what seems a large sum of money, when in actuality it's not, and leaves the forest in a worse off place. And they don't understand sustainable forest management practices. So what we're seeing is that well-intentioned but ill-informed landowners are making decisions that significantly compromise their ability to meet their objectives and have negative consequences on the future of the forest. So why won't landowners contact us? One of the big things is our use of management language. I know that the Nature Conservancy did a study a while back, and a colleague of mine at Tennessee did another study about this. Part of the problem is our use of the term manage. A friend of mine, Miriam Davis at University of Tennessee, did a study with people who identified themselves as they don't manage, non-managers. And what she did was she went out and she talked to them about their land and what they did on their land, and she found that they were doing things that we call management. They were clearing trails, they were harvesting firewood, they were building trails for recreation, but they didn't call it management. And so when we approached them saying, do you manage their land? Well, no. We tend our land, we care for our land, we steward our land, but we don't manage it, because manages is tree farms, manages plantations, manages something else. So part of that is our language that we're coming at them. A lot of people just don't even know that we're out there. When you think about a lot of landowners purchase their land for solitude and privacy, well, I don't really need a resource there because I don't need somebody else to know about my land. I want to be away from everybody. So part of this is all the background for my thoughts about why we need to change how we approach landowners. So basically, our role is evolving, and you all know this as practitioners. You work less with the resource itself and more with those who own the resource. Your job has evolved from being an on-the-ground, hands-dirty, doing on the land to educating people about what are good things to do on their land. So some of the things we're doing here and trying to get this conversation started in the undergraduate curriculum and then also in the practitioner's point of view. Well, from the academic point of view, we're looking to change our curriculum. A couple years ago, we offered an undergraduate course in facilitating natural resources decisions. And we really spent a lot of time focused on how, as a resource professional, we have an obligation and a role as an educator and a communicator, and that was a big part of the job of a resource professional. From the practical side of things, engaging practitioners in proposing new ways for them, every year we do stewardship plan writers trainings, bring a bunch of consulting foresters together who are looking to become plan writers. And we've changed how we offer that. We're really spending a lot of time talking about how to engage landowners, how to talk with them, how to educate them and use that interaction as an opportunity, and then focusing on the right questions. So one of the exercises I do with the consulting foresters and with students, and this is just to get you thinking this morning. We ask them to think about what do landowners want from their land, what are their primary objectives, and we have them break up into small groups and make a list of their perceptions of the top objectives. So just to engage you a little bit, if you would type in the chat pod your top 3 reasons why landowners own their woodland. Anyone? Thank you. Let's see. Wildlife, yes. Wildlife, recreation. Recreation, wildlife, yes. Solitude. Prevent development, interesting. Wildlife, solitude. There's one more person typing. I'll wait on that one. Place connection, sounds and smells, restoration, and respite from the postmodern world. personal enjoyment. Okay, well, as part of our study that we did about landowners, we asked them why they own their land. And these are Pennsylvania landowners, but just for comparison purposes, and I would argue that probably most private forest landowners are around the nation probably pretty close to the same. Number one was the enjoyment of owning, that they just appreciated knowing that they had forest land somewhere, that there was that sense of peace, that sense of gladness in knowing that there was a piece of forest land that they held. Hunting opportunities was number two for us, solitude, an estate to pass on. Wildlife was number five, recreation. It came with the property. So these were people who had purchased farms or houses, and there was woodland with it. So that's why they owned it. Growing timber for sale was down at number 8. 9 is land investment, and 10 is personal use of the wood. So when I talk to the students about this, they're putting money, the almighty dollar sign, at number 1. And that's what they're hearing in their education. And so it's always kind of shocking to them to see this, that actually landowners think about it differently. So knowing all that, how do we get to a different kind of relationship? Well, we have to understand what landowners like about their land, what they value about their land. We have to know what they worry about with their land. We have to know their hopes and dreams. And then we have to help them figure out a way to translate that into something they can do on their land to enhance or address an issue. So this is where the role of questions comes in. And I'm going to talk about phenomenology. Phenomenology is the study of phenomena, the study of experience. And if you ever took a philosophy course or maybe introduced in psychology course, this was kind of a reaction to the Cartesian mind-body split. I think, therefore I am. What the folks that espoused existential phenomenology said was that everything we do is an interaction with something. We as a human being are always in relationship with the world, with another person, with time. And so everything we experience is kind of seen through these filters. And because we all experience the world through our bodies and our sight and our sound, our senses, that we kind of experience things in similar ways. So basically you use it to figure out how people experience things and what is meaningful to them about the experience through their descriptions. So it's really going for what they've lived and done and reacted to rather than a why or a justification. So phenomenological interviews are done through with people who have had an experience. So you're looking for description. You're looking to answer the question what, not why. And the reason for that is when you ask somebody why, and I know that my slide just a couple back had why there, but I don't remember what the exact wording was. That was my shorthand. But when you ask people something why, there's kind of an inherent judgment to that. Why did you do that? Well, then I have to justify myself. It's going to go on tone of voice. If you ask me with a sneer in your to your mouth when you say it, well, I'm going to know that you disapprove of what I did, and so I'm going to kind of backpedal and start throwing out why I did it. Or if you ask me why I did something with a smile on my face, I'm going to know that you approve of it, and so I'm going to feed that. So, but when you ask a question, what did you do? What happened next? People give a different kind of description. They don't justify things, and you get to a different place. So when you're doing an interview, you start with a general question about whatever your topic is, and then it just goes into a conversation directed by where the person telling the story goes. It is very respectful. And then usually when you do these interviews from a research standpoint, you're recording them. But I've done it with people and just taken notes and recorded kind of trigger moments and asked for more explanation. But when you're trying to get a sense of what this is and what they're saying, you really have to be very open to it. And you use the hermeneutic circle as a way of looking at it, where you analyze the part in the context of the whole, and the whole in the context of the parts, just to make sure you're being true to what people are telling you. You look for themes within the interview, things that people kept reiterating, kept coming up, words that they kept using over and over as they described an experience. And those kind of things are going to tell you what stood out to them, what was meaningful to them. And then if you're going to share that, you can keep it with the participant's words because it's their story. And then if you do this with multiple interviews, you kind of look for themes across the interviews. And I'll give you an example of that in just a second. But what you're getting out of this is an idea of what's meaningful in the person's words. You understand their values and attitudes. If you do it with multiple people, you're getting a collection of stories. That's really going to foster a new understanding. And the interaction, this type of interview is so very personal and requires the building of such trust that the relationship is pretty strong and kind of is a foundation for future efforts. So let me give you just a random example. So say I were to interview a landowner, and I'll give a more concrete one in just a second. Tell me a story about a time when you were on your land. And I'm interviewing a male landowner, and he starts telling me a story that stands out to him, a story about when his grandson shot his first deer on the property. He locates in space where it happened. He tells me what the weather was like. He tells me the aesthetics. The leaves had turned color, were falling. There were just a few left. He tells me the logistics of it, what type of gun was used. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, hunting is very important to this person. His relationship with his land is about providing opportunities to enhance his hunting experiences. Well, then he goes on and he starts talking about the story evolves, and he goes on and says, tells me at the time his father took him out, and he had a successful hunt. It was on a different property, but it was the similar kind of interaction with a parent and a grandparent and that relationship. And so suddenly, this new idea of, okay, the family legacy is really important to this individual too. So it's not just about the hunting, but the whole story he's telling me is taking me to a different place where, okay, I understand that now, not just enhancing the recreation opportunities on their land, now we need to think about helping this individual plan for the future, because he wants his grandson to have similar experiences to what he did. Another concrete example, in 2007, I did a course a grad level course on applied phenomenology. And we went through the philosophy behind it and the ins and outs of how you do it, how you analyze it. And then we sent the students out to interview landowners. And their question, what they asked the landowners to do was, tell me a story that stands out for you of a time when you were on your land. And then they all brought their stories back. They'd recorded them, and we transcribed them and analyzed them together. And we developed these themes out of their stories. So the big theme was, my land is a place for connection with others. And that ran the gamut from solitude, being out there by myself that takes the pressure off, to come and enjoy it with us. It's what keeps us together all the time. It's a place for all of us to bond. But the land was about others and a relationship with others. Okay, and the next theme that came out, that was the second tier theme, not as strong, was this idea of use and enjoyment. It's good therapy. It's a lot better than going to the shrink, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm just amazed at what the forest produces. So this idea of their interaction with the land as a resource, from providing the getaway, the therapy to a use of the products. And then way down at the bottom of the list, and only mentioned by a couple of people, was this idea of management. It takes care of itself. It sits on the back burner until I need something from it. Or trees need care. Proper management is doing the right thing. But this idea of management was not mentioned. But when you think about where we engage landowners, it's often there at this management idea. And so what would happen if we approached our interaction with them coming at it from their relationship with other people, their idea of using it and enjoying it? That just kind of sets a different tone and moves the conversation to a different place. So in a practical standpoint, practical point of view, how can you do this? Well, oftentimes our first question to a landowner is, well, what are your objectives for your land? Well, objectives are pretty cut and dried. They can be pretty limiting in the language that they're going to respond to you, because objective is a I don't know, business management kind of word, goals and objectives. But if you start in a different place, what means the most to you about your land? What do you like about your land? Tell me a story about your land. The conversation starts out totally different, and you get to a different understanding of who this person is and how they interact with and value their land that might change what you would prescribe for them as a consulting forester or a wildlife habitat person, and in proposing practices to thinking about resources that you would offer them to use as they go forward in their journey of being a landowner. There are other practical tools. You don't have to, if you don't like the question idea or people are uncomfortable with stories, use pictures. A colleague of mine here, Sanford Smith, developed these forest story cards, and they are 52 cards plus a wild card of kind of generic pictures. You know, they're not identifiable as an individual's property, and they're pictures of a park-like setting, because we all know most landowners like how that looks with the big trees and open understory. Pictures of ATVs, pictures of ferns, pictures of deer, you know, recreation hunting. And how he uses them is he asks landowners or whomever to go through the pack and identify 3 pictures that represent to them something they like about their forest. And sometimes he often says that people surprise him in what they choose, that they choose the picture of the ferns, which are a problem for us here in Pennsylvania and interfere with our regeneration that we think are a bad thing, but that people talk about biodiversity, and that picture looks to them like a biodiversity picture, and so that elicits that kind of idea. Other ways are, you know, encourage landowners to take pictures of their important places and have something to share in your early conversations with them. Pictures worth 1,000 words, and especially some places that are special and important to them are going to give you a different kind of interaction. And then we take these stories and we help translate them into actionable goals. You know, linking their values that evolve out of their stories to places on the ground, and then finding ways to enhance those values through neat and tidy objectives, if you like, proposing practices, long-term planning. What we're finding is that this process of helping make explicit the values that landowners know implicitly in their gut, it's gonna make those values stronger. That process of helping them to articulate it, helping them to think through what they hold dear, is really going to strengthen their relationship with their land. And then finding ways to enhance those values might move them towards perhaps a stronger conservation ethic, a stronger stewardship ethic, which means that that land might stay working forest land or might stay a valued resource for wildlife, what have you, in the longer term. So we move from this idea of the natural resource professional as the holder of all the information, passing it through to everyone, to becoming part of the conversation, where landowner experiences are held on a par with natural resource expertise, and they're valued equally in the relationship. I'm going to quickly delve into collaborative learning, just because it's something to think about in practice, and I know that it's helped me and kind of changed the way I think about my interactions with landowners. But collaborative learning is basically how people learn together. So for my work, it's been how landowners and resource professionals can learn together and create something new, hopefully, a new relationship, a new understanding, a new opportunity. And there are 4 or 5 elements of collaborative learning. And the first is dialogue, which is about how the conversation happens. The second is an idea of focusing on construction, that in these interactions, you're really focusing on creating that something new, the new relationship, the new understanding. Collaborative learning involves this idea that there are multiple ways of knowing, that my technical expertise is just as valued as your life experience on the land. That we're appreciating those types of knowledge in the same way. It also, from a academic standpoint, involves cycles of action and reflection, where you propose things, you go out and you do them, you come back and you reflect on them, and that may all be in conversation. And then I've added this piece of fellowship. This kind of work and this kind of interaction is really based a lot in having a good personal relationship. You have to trust the people you're interacting with to do this kind of thing. So as a resource professional, you know, it's all about becoming trustworthy to the people for whom you're doing work. So let's talk about dialogue, because that's really the main process by which this happens. So dialogue is basically a word that means through the word. Dia meaning through, logos meaning the word. Bohm, who is a physicist turned communications person, says it's a stream of meaning flowing through us, between us. It's Isaacs, who wrote a great book called Dialogue and the Art of Thinking Together, says it's about shared inquiry. It's something you do with others. An example of what a dialogue's like. Say you're sitting around with a group of friends, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this, and someone poses a problem. Somebody else jumps in. Oh, yes, that happened to me, and here's what I did. And another says, ooh, that's a good idea. Well, what if you tried this? And it goes on, and people are contributing their experience and their ideas, and even the original person who brought up the issue is proposing some things. And it goes on until something is created that was built on all the contributed parts, and everyone just kind of sits back and goes, okay, that's it. We just solved that. That's what happens in a dialogue. It's the group creating something from their conversation that everybody contributed to, that they couldn't have gotten to by themselves, because it took all those parts coming together. But together they created something. So that's kind of how a dialogue works. Isaacs broke it out like this. He said, you know, when you first interact with somebody, you're very polite. You stay safe. You talk about the weather. You talk about not politics, because that's not safe anymore. You talk about kids in school. Eventually, your relationships moves to a stage where there's disagreement. It's not headbutting conflict, but it's a realization that you don't agree. And that could happen. You could go back to being polite, or you move ahead and you say, okay, well, why? Why are we not seeing eye to eye? Let's figure this out. Let's propose some new ideas. And then eventually, if you work through that, you kind of move into creating that something new. Now, the example I just gave you was a group of friends. So they had already moved past the politeness and the breakdown stage. People know that they disagree on things and have learned how to handle that because they're friends. But they were in that inquiry and reflection stage. Well, what happens if? Well, what in my experience? And they created something new. So they were working in this stage 3 and stage 4. So how do you operate in this stage 3 area, moving past breaking down? Well, you do things like you ask back. You inquire into things that strike you. Well, I heard you use the phrase sustainable. Well, what does that mean to you? Keep an open mind. You ask others to be willing to share too. And if people are sitting quietly, well, Joe, what are you thinking out there? You'd be willing to contribute your own perspective, but you can't hold to it as an absolute truth. Otherwise, everybody gets entrenched and reacts to your entrenchment. You acknowledge things others say that affect you. Wow, I heard you talk about your land in such a moving and way related to your family. Tell me more about that. And you really focus on this moving to new understanding. So from a practical side of things, how are you talking to landowners? Well, you help them relate new information that you're sharing back to their experiences. You help to make new information meaningful because you have an understanding of where they're coming from, with the goal of sharing your expertise with them and asking them to share their experiences with you. So why are we pushing us to go this way in Pennsylvania? Well, what we're finding is this kind of way of operating is getting people talking. That the work I did with landowners and resource professionals, it really helped them find some common ground. And then they could move on to creating some new productive ways of some proposals for how the Division of Forestry was going to operate that would be better for members of the community who needed that as a resource. That you're seeing better stewardship happening because peers and resource professionals become peers in this kind of relationship. That they're sharing ideas and people are respecting each other. Landowners are getting empowered to do things and realizing that they have value and voice in their life experience, and so they have something to contribute. And then we're looking at more sustainable opportunities will come out of it because everybody's contributing. It's that whole piece about finding common ground. So I'm going to my last little section is on peers, and I know I'm running up against some time, so I'll go quickly with this. And when I talk about peers are a hat that we can all wear. A peer is a hat we can all wear. When we talk about peers, well, there's a tremendous multiplier effect. It ties very closely into how adults learn. Trust is a very important part of that relationship, and this whole piece of experience and life experience come out. So why do we use a peer approach? Well, it's highly effective. For us in Pennsylvania, we're seeing that landowners are learning best from peers. When we factor in everybody who owns forest land from 1 acre and up, we have more than 600,000 forest owners in Pennsylvania. I went to the U.S. Forest Service site just for comparison purposes, and of the landowners who own between 10 and 999 acres, Minnesota, for example, has 95,000 of them. Pennsylvania has 182,000. So we have a whole lot more that own less than 10 acres. And I apologize, I couldn't find that same statistic for Minnesota. But we're also having high rates of turnover. So from a professional standpoint, those are vast numbers of people to reach. The resource professional population is just not big enough to reach all those people. So peers are working better for us. When you think about how adults learn, well, you learn differently now than you did when you were in school. And you really factor in your life experiences. You have an experience, you see something new, you try it out. And you try it out in the context of your life experience and expertise to date. And then you kind of go, okay, did this work? Did it fit? Does it fit with what I already know? And then you make a decision about it. Well, that's a load of hooey. That doesn't fit with anything I know. Or you say, okay, it fits. I see it. I'm gonna accept it. It becomes part of your knowledge. And this kind of interaction, this adult learning, happens very easily in peer settings and in formal education. Part of it is the trust and experience. You're dealing with somebody like me who's been in my situation and can share their practical experience. I don't know if you all have seen the article by Guti et al. 2010. It's getting quoted a lot about how professionals and non-professionals evaluate knowledge. But what they say about non-professionals, and these are landowners, that their willingness to listen to advice is influenced by their social impressions of the person delivering the advice. That they don't have the expertise to rate your knowledge, rate a professional's knowledge levels and the correctness of what they're telling the landowner. So instead, the landowners use a metric that they know. Would I trust you in a social setting? Do you listen to me when I'm talking? Do I respect what you're telling me? And that's a bigger part of how they evaluate what's coming out of professionals' mouths. And that's that whole peer thing. I'm going to jump over. I was quickly going to just talk about some peer network stuff that we're doing here, but I'm going to move a little quicker fast through this and just get to my closing slides. We've got our Woodland Owners Associations, volunteer groups, Pennsylvania Forest Stewards, who I work with, Master Stewards, Woodland Stewards, Covert Cooperators. They go by lots of different names. For us, we're looking for people who can learn how to better manage their own forest land and then motivate others to do it too. So that paying it out, paying it forward, becoming a trusted resource. We're asking them to help other landowners figure out objectives, alternatives, and where to go for assistance. So we're promoting this peer relationship and promoting these interactions and changing how natural resource professionals operate, but we're still saying we value the expertise, that we're looking for ways for you all to, resource professionals, to engage with landowners. We've had some success with our groups. In 2009, we had almost 22 full-time equivalents an hour each time given by our peers, so that's really working for us. But just to sum up where I've been. So in your interactions, and I guess these are the take-home points I hope you'll take away from this. In your interactions with landowners as a resource professional, start with stories. Get to know landowners on a personal level. Recognize your educational opportunities and fine-tune it to the landowner's values, which you have to take the time to learn. And then really promote yourself as a peer. Be willing to take off the professional's hat and be willing to kind of figure things out together and maybe not have to have an answer. And then finally expect to learn as much, and if not more, from the landowner as they will from you. These are the citations. The one that I mentioned is the Guti article right here. If you all haven't seen it, that's a fascinating read and really said a lot to me about this kind of thing. So that was what I wanted to cover today. I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer or try to answer. Your experience, how is your limited time best used to reach private landowners? What we're finding based on limited time is really leveraging the peers. Our peer network is comprised of landowners who understand that they want to learn more about their resource or have had something happen and are reacting to it, and they espouse a stewardship ethic and they're willing to pay it forward. So we're investing a lot of time in our peers, and we're doing it in these kind of ways. We're showing them how to engage other landowners by asking to share stories, and that's gone over really well as they think about how they carry forward their outreach. So for us, it's the multiplier effect of the peer and then supporting that network. And we're doing things like providing educational opportunities, teaching them how to reach out, teaching them how to communicate. In 2009, they said they gave us 45,000 hours in stewardship. They estimated they reached 16,500 people. That's way more than I did. In our webinar series in a year, we reached 3,000 live, 3,000 asynchronously. So that's an order of magnitude greater than what we were able. No, not an order of magnitude. Sorry, 10,000 people more than we were able to as the professionals using technology. So limited time is we're really looking at that, looking at those interactions and doing some work with the resource professionals to help them value those experiences, those people. Any other questions? I see multiple attendees are typing, but you all also might be chatting. Have we provided this training to, I don't know what SWCDS or NRCS. We've not gone to NRCS folks. The people who we started with were our State Bureau of Forestry, the people who were on the ground. And for us, the service foresters are still the first point of contact, even though NRCS folks have all the money and the resources. In Pennsylvania, the service foresters are the technical service providers for NRCS. So they're our first point of contact. So we've started with them. For us in Pennsylvania, NRCS is trying to figure their way through all this. So they haven't been looking for this kind of thing yet, and we haven't offered. But we're working on getting it out there. Thank you, Mike, Soil and Water Conservation District. A lot of the Conservation District folks and NRCS folks are on our mailing list and seeing the kinds of things we're doing with our landowners, but haven't come forward to say we want to know more about that. The people that have been the land trusts and conservancies, and they're looking for different ways to interact. Increased communication with the wood producing industry with a collaborative approach for landowners. We have not gone there. For us in Pennsylvania, the wood product industry is so depressed right now. I think we would be amenable. I think it would be an exciting opportunity to help them out. They are coming to our plan writers training, so they are getting exposed to it a little bit, but not a full-on training about this. So it's an audience maybe for us, but we haven't gone there yet. I've found working in Lake and Cook counties that what you say about landowner values being different than forester values is often correct. And I would assume that those are probably areas where there are more landowners, more private forest landowners, perhaps people who move to the area, purchase land versus old-timer kind of thing. A mixture of both old-timers and new-timers, yeah. Yeah, people are funny. I mean, that's the fun part about this. Everybody's a unique individual, but there's some commonality to all of it. There's some commonality to why they own land. There's something about being a landowner that's pretty special to a lot of people. And finding that commonality and finding that way to approach them and talk about their values and help them give them voice. It's pretty powerful. But you find that people are somewhat the same. and sometimes helping them find that common ground and that commonality helps them move to a different place within neighborhoods, within watersheds. I think that's been the most fun part about all this on my journey, that I started out wanting to be in a fire tower by myself, and now I've just come to realize how much I like people. And so part of this is my acting on that, how much I like people and how I can help people. So I can't tell if anybody's typing in more questions right now, but things are slowing down a little bit. Mike, are you out there?
Allison, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was talking and so I didn't press the right button. I had it on mute. But thinking back on my own family with our farm and sawmill and business in Wisconsin, next to the Menominee Indian Reservation, my parents protected the land, the lake. It was a kettle marine lake, big veneer quality oak and white pine and white cedar bordering the reservation, and so we worked together with the state of Minnesota to develop a state natural area. This was about 5 years ago, and my dad's 90, my mom's 88, just turned 89, and that is a legacy that they wanted to do. They wanted to protect the area for the future. So it took a lot of work and some sacrifice because they donated a certain amount in order to make it happen. You were right on from our family perspective as far as the values of that land, of our land, looking at it from a family perspective, and the time spent in the woods with my relatives, my dad and my brother and my son, was very, very important part of our heritage. So I see we have a couple more here yet, and then we'll call it quits after these questions, and I'll finish out.
Matt's offered a forest values checklist that he used, Matt Tyler, to get folks' impressions. Mike, do you have a ability to share resources like that?
Yes, we have a website. Yeah, our SFEC website. Matt, if you wanted to share that, we could list that as a reference on our website. I'd be happy to do that. So just, if you'd like to send it my way, we could list it as a resource. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. A copy or PDF of the presentation, do you also post that on your resources page, Mike?
The webinar today will be archived on our link, so go to our webpage. On the upper left-hand side of the SFEC website, you'll have a link to past webinars, and then you'll see the whole listing of them. You can click onto them and get referred back to the Iowa State University link, and the entire webinar is archived, so you'll be able to hear Allison and you'll be able to hear the questions and answers as well. Okay, I'd like to thank Allison for just a very, very interesting webinar on a topic that's near and dear to all of us, working with private landowners and how to best reach them and to better understand their needs and to talk with them and learn about their stories and do it in a respectful manner. But this is very interesting to me, Allison. I very much appreciate you spending time with us and sharing all the way from Pennsylvania. You have many like similarities in not only private forest land ownership, but also in how you reach those landowners. And I appreciate you sharing your research and how you work with us in Minnesota and the Midwest.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. And so for those of you in the audience, we have a few other SFEC educational opportunities coming up. On August 24th, we have our intermediate stand treatment Northern Hardwoods Field Day in Aiken County with Mark Jacobs. On September 20th, we have another webinar. This is with Angela Gupta on the new ash management woodland management book that was just produced. Mike Reichenbach gave me a copy. It's very well done, with emerald ash borer being a big concern. It's very timely and very well done. And then on September 21 is a synthesis of fire and oak. We have the very first of two programs with Professor Lee Freilich in Rochester, Minnesota. The next one after that would be at the Cloquet Forestry Center in November. So keep those in mind, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you again with other programs. And again, thank you, Allison, for a very nicely done webinar, and I'd like to thank Jean, also from Iowa State University, for helping us record and produce this webinar today. So unless we have other questions, I guess we have Allison's email address up front. Thanks again, Allison. Any other comments, thoughts? Otherwise, we'll close it out. Okay, so have a good day and hope everything goes well with all of you. Talk to you later.